Joining us now live in person is Katie Halper. She is host of The Katie Halper Show and co-host of the Useful Idiots podcast, along with another friend of the show, Matt Taibbi. Great to see you, Katie.
Good to see you, Katie. We're finally meeting in person. I think it's wild.
So that is weird.
I feel like I've known you for years.
I know, that is really weird.
Yeah.
So the reason Katie is in town is because she and myself and Marianne Williamson and Brianna Joy Gray at this very table, by the way, Sagar, Brianna was very
held up
impressed
well.
with your desk.
Good,
she loved it.
Yeah,
she said there's something that makes you
plus
feel
size.
powerful about sitting at this desk. Anyway.
Love it.
We all came together to do a live stream to both raise awareness and also to benefit Stephen Donziger's legal defense fund. And Katie normally is in New York, but came down so that we could all be together, which was another thing that, like, you know, we're all friends, but we realized, I don't think we've certainly never been all in the same room together. I don't even know if we've all been in the same state together. So it was a little bit of left YouTube history. But Katie, I wanted to have you on both to talk a little bit about the stream last night, which I think, you know, we were really excited about, and we had some incredible guests who were able to join us, but also just to talk about the issue itself. You kind of spearheaded, you know, we were all on board, but you really took the reins of saying, we got to do this and we got to do it now, and let's set a date and let's get this going. So just speak a little bit to why this was so important to you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on again. And I think the Stephen Donziger case, to me, it's pretty similar in some ways. There are obviously some differences, but it's an interesting parallel to the Assange case in many ways, where you have in the case of Donziger, you have a corporate prosecution and persecution of someone who was just doing his job. He was defending people in Ecuador whose water had been poisoned by Chevron. He was doing something really noble. He was taking on an incredibly powerful corporation, and for that reason, he was punished by being sent to prison after being sent to living under house arrest. And it's a topsy-turvy world, right, where you have the person who actually does the right thing, takes on the evil corporation. And Chevron, while there was a lawsuit that determined they owed the people of Ecuador $9.5 billion, has paid nothing. The only person who has suffered any consequences as a result of this has been the person who went after Chevron, Stephen Donziger.
Right.
And in a similar vein, you have Assange, Snowden, and Manning, the only people who have gone to any trouble over the United States' awful war crimes have been the people who have helped reveal those war crimes. And it really puts, I think, a light on how much of a joke our democracy has become. And you see this both in the actions of the U.S. government and also the complicity of the media. And you also see how bipartisan this project is, right? Because you have this under Trump and under Biden. And something we've talked about before is how actually, you know, hello, libs out there, you should be up in arms about this. If Trump did this, you know, this corporate prosecution, you'd be very upset. If Trump and Pompeo did this, why is Joe Biden, in the case of Assange, why is Biden siding with Pompeo and Trump and not Obama?
Yeah, I think the part that really got to me with Stephen is the first lawyer in U.S., even if he was guilty, which is very up in the air, is the first lawyer in U.S. history who's literally ever served jail time in contempt of court, and also was being prosecuted by a private prosecutor. I mean, when I learned all the details,
yeah,
I was
it's
like,
insane.
This is completely
It's so insane, it's hard to wrap your head around.
No, it's actually hard to explain, because you're like,
Exactly.
well,
Sounds
there
like
was
a
this
conspiracy
case.
theorist.
No, but it's for real.
It's
you're
true,
like,
right.
You're like, wait. You were at home for 2 years and now you're in jail? Like, so I know you guys have a statement from Stephen. Do you want to read some of that?
Yeah, so he wrote us a statement from prison, and it's relatively lengthy. I think we'll post it online so you guys can see the whole thing, but I'll just read a little bit of it. He says, I write this via email on day 42 of my imprisonment as, to your point, Sagar, the first lawyer in the U.S. to spend even 1 day in jail for my misdemeanor contempt offense, for which I assert my innocence. I am the first lawyer ever to be locked up for a misdemeanor of any kind. As the United Nations ruled, my jailing in the nation's first corporate prosecution appears to be retaliation for my successful work as a human rights lawyer who helped indigenous peoples in Ecuador win a historic $10 billion pollution judgment against Chevron. And I'll just give you a few of the details. I mean, he talks about, look, life in prison. I know there are lots of jokes about Club Fed. This is not a fun place to be. Federal prison is extraordinarily difficult and tough environment, and it's been made even worse that they've been in lockdown over COVID. since November 18th. Nobody can get outside except once or twice a week for an hour. I live with another man in a 60-square-foot cell designed for one person. We take meals in the cell, food is scarce, medical care is spotty, programming largely on hold, and COVID testing is virtually non-existent. This is close to solitary confinement. It is a hard time. Of 900 or so men in the prison, I'm the only person here not convicted of a felony. He does say, I mean, it's horrific what's been done to him, what's been done to his family, and of course, the bigger picture, what it means for all of us and what it means for the people in Ecuador, which he always, and goes out of his way here too, to say, don't forget what this is all about. Right. Chevron committed grave crimes in Ecuador for which they have yet to pay a single dollar. And some of what we heard last night, Katie, was people who had been to Ecuador, had spoken with the people, some of the activists who have been involved, who understand the extent of the damage there that's been done.
Yeah, I spoke to Luis Llanza, who is part of the Amazon Defense Coalition, who lives in this area, Lago Agrio, which was poisoned by Chevron. And, you know, the cancer rates, the birth defects, again, this is just absolute venal craven greed that allows for Chevron to just literally sentence people to death in order to make more money. And it's rapacious. And again, the fact that the only person who's been in trouble for this has been Steven. And they're also going after people in Ecuador, a lawyer in Ecuador, and Luis Llanza, this activist. So I think we also have another statement, by the way, from Noam Chomsky, which I think sums it up well.
We had so many wonderful guests last night that we couldn't even get to all the things we had planned.
You got to turn into the stream, youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. I'm not saying that's a plug, although a plug is, of course, nice.
No,
but really,
we'll put a link
find it. Okay, awesome. And so this is what Noam Chomsky said over email to me. Steven Donziger performed a major service for all of us by exposing the shocking activities of Chevron. His reward, to be targeted by a vicious corporate judicial campaign relying on the vast resources of the corporation whose malfeasance he exposed, and to be subjected to harsh punishment. This is not only a disgraceful miscarriage of justice, but also, as no doubt intended, a warning to others daring to expose the crimes of powerful corporate institutions.
Wow.
Which sums it up.
Let me ask you guys this. What's next? I mean, is there any possible, I mean, I know he's going to get out of prison, 6 months, I think. I mean, but is there any recourse on having this vacated? Like, what exactly is the next course of action for him?
Well, they are trying to get it vacated. They're trying to make it so he doesn't have to still fulfill the 6 months sentence. But you know something else, and I spoke to one of his lawyers, Martin Garbus, is that Chevron can just go at him again and again. They can throw all the money that they want to into this case, because it's not just about avoiding paying the $9.5 billion. It's really about not wanting to set a precedent where they are at all responsible for their actions. So part of the reason that freeing Steven Donziger and raising funds for Steven Donziger is so important is you're also raising funds for the people of Ecuador so that they can continue this legal fight to make them pay. And I just think that something so important is that one of the two very corrupt judges who oversaw this case, and of course something irregular about this case, is that the prosecutor declined to prosecute, and Judge Kaplan then took the extraordinary step of hiring a private firm to prosecute Donziger.
Who has Chevron as a client.
Right, and that firm had represented Chevron. He also handpicked the judge and sent it to this judge from the Federalist Society. No shade.
Oh, listen, go ahead.
Sagar's not a Federalist Society.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
subtweeted the Fed stock many times on the podcast.
Which is a right-wing legal organization that, of course, the left, it would be nice, hello, you could start doing this yourself, but whatever, of course they don't do that. And she is so brazen in her taunting of Donziger that during her sentencing, she said that it seems like only the proverbial 2x4 between the eyes will instill a sense of respect of the law for Mr. Donziger. The impunity and the lack of, I'm not a big decorum person, but I thought judges were supposed to have that.
No, I mean, if anybody's supposed to have decorum, it's probably a judge. Yeah, I agree with you.
Marianne and Susan Sarandon, who wants to, I think, play Judge Prescott.
Yes, they both want her to play Judge Prescott. They're both very invested.
We're talking about how she seemed to actually take pleasure in a psychopathic way in what they were doing to Steven. And to your point, Katie, anyone would forgive this man at this point if he said, you know what, when I get out of prison, I want to move on. Like, I want to go on with life. I want to do other things. Like, God bless you, I hope. But I have a family. I have a life. I got to move on to something different. But he fully intends to continue pressing the case against Chevron, which, to your point, is why the Legal Defense Fund isn't just about, which that would be a worthy cause in and of itself. Right. He has such massive legal bills, which was also an intentional strategy of Chevron to pile up massive legal bills and sort of like bleed him dry, war of attrition. But we were raising money for his Legal Defense Fund, both so that he can cover his legal expenses, but also so that he can continue the fight against Chevron, because the fact of the matter is they have yet to pay a single dollar for the crimes that they committed. Just so people get a sense of, we had Roger Waters, we had Richard Wolff, who was phenomenal. We had Susan Sarandon, we had Chris Hedges.
Lucy Lawless,
Lucy Lawless, she was fantastic.
She was really,
She, I'd never spoken with her before or really watched her before, and she had actually traveled to Ecuador.
Oh, wow.
And so she could speak with great passion and eloquence to the situation on the ground there. But we also had Nina Turner on, who, as always, eloquent and passionate. Let's take a listen to a little of what Nina had to say.
I just want to make two important points, which is justice cannot wait until the opposing party is in power for us to stand up for it. If it's just to stand up for this under Trump, it's just to stand up for this under Biden. So that shouldn't matter. And then secondly, I want people to imagine if they were in the middle of an ocean drowning, which person or persons do you want to come and save you? Do you want the person who's going to parse out, who's going to be hurt if I come to save you, whose feelings, or do you want somebody to say, to hell with whoever, I'm coming out to radically save you? Or if your house was on fire, well, guess what? Our house, being Mother Earth, is on fire. The people of Ecuador have been transgressed. Stephen and other folks have stood up for these people. Now Stephen is in jail, in prison, paying the price for standing up for justice. And the least we can do is have the decency to call out people who ask for this power. Bree Joy, I'm right with you. It just boggles my mind how we are programmed to protect the people who have the most power and then look down our noses and tell the people who have the least power to wait for justice to come.
Now, we did have one member of Congress, Chuy Garcia out of Illinois, who sent us a pre-recorded message, which we really appreciated. We've had Rashida Tlaib, who advocated, and we've also had, I think, maybe 9 members of Congress who signed onto a letter calling on the Department of Justice to, do they call on them to commute a sentence or to take over the prosecution?
Yeah, reclaim it. I mean, Stephen Donziger says, I'm the only person who wants to be prosecuted by the Justice Department.
Right. But what Nina's getting at here, Senator Turner's getting at here, is like, what are you all afraid of? Because ultimately, a grassroots upswell of support, which Stephen has behind him, and we saw, people responding online last night, that's one thing. But these are the people in power. I mean, they're the ones who could make things really uncomfortable for the Biden administration and shame them into action and point out the dramatic inconsistency between their statement and their actions or inaction on this case. And so far, we haven't seen much.
Yeah, I mean, so the ask is obviously they could take it back from this corporate prosecution, or they could just free him immediately. And something we see a lot is this, hiding behind the veil of technocracy or the veil of, would love to do it, just can't do that. And we all know that that's a myth. So they could immediately free him. Also, I should mention people should go to freedonziger.com to learn more about what can be done. But yeah, I think, again, we see this thing that if we're done under Trump, people would be up in arms. And instead of calling it out, to be fair, part of the reason they're not calling it out is because the Dems aren't that much better when it comes to climate change, when it comes to their donors having ties to fossil fuels. And we see, the people who represent Stephen in Congress and in the Senate, Gillibrand, Schumer, and Jerry Nadler, they haven't even bothered to respond to the significant and substantial petitions that they've gotten from their own constituents asking them to address this. And that's in large part because they have their own ties to the fossil fuel industry. And I think that what Nina's saying here is so important. And as always, Senator Turner is so eloquent and so inspired and inspiring. And the question is, will Democrats actually wake up to things like this? Will they actually differentiate themselves as not Republicans, indeed, not just in rhetoric? And we see it whether it's climate change in general, dragging their heels on climate change, or the way that they are allowing for this corporate prosecution and corporate persecution of Donziger, which again, they would in rhetoric. This is why it's so convenient for the Dems to have Republicans in power, because it's great to be able to point to the Republicans as the bad guys when they do this. And they are the bad guys when they do this. And they're slightly worse, I would say, on these issues than the Democrats are.
Definitely.
Right? There's a substantive difference.
Yes.
But that's not enough. You can't be you can't just be not Trump on these issues.
Yeah. No, and on these particular issues, they're not even not Trump. They're literally with Assange, with Donziger, they're continuing the exact same direction of the Trump Department of Justice. Guys, if you want to, we'd love for you to watch the stream. It's at Katie's channel on YouTube. We'll post the link in the comments. If you're able to give freedonziger.com to his legal defense fund, both for his legal bills, but also to continue the fight against Chevron, because this is just an incredible travesty. And I ask everybody, he's in prison. I mean, we've had Stephen on
he's literally in jail.
A number of times. Katie's interviewed him. He's an incredibly effective advocate and spokesperson for himself, but he can't speak right now. So we have to keep the pressure on. We have to keep the attention on, and that was really the inspiration for last night.
For Stephen, for his wife, for his son, and for the people of Ecuador, and for justice in general, and taking on corporate power in general.
That's exactly right.
I don't know if you announced this, Crystal, but we're putting $1,000 here at Breaking Points into the fund, and I encourage you guys to do so as well. No matter where you fall, it's an important case. The only lawyer in U.S. history to be in prison for contempt. That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. And the allegations of fraud against him, by the way, were based on dishonest testimony from an Ecuadorian judge who had he and his family were relocated by Chevron and coached.
Right.
Yeah.
Were brought to the U.S. in exchange for lying, basically.
There you go.
Katie, thank you for helping spearhead this thing and making it
having
happen. The response last night seemed to be really good. Thank you to all the guests that we had last night, and thank you to all of you guys for caring about this case, because we've seen the interest from our audience as well.
That's right. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Of course, if you can support us, premium link is there in the description, but it's enough about that, and we will see you all next week.
Have a good one, guys. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.